What's up, YouTube Nation? I'm the Coffee Bean Jim, and this is a video about why dungeons suck. Plain and simple, they suck. So here's the thing. Let me get my book here. Now, dungeons are the epitome of Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's half the freaking title right there, dungeons. You know, the whole idea is crawling through these mountainous ruins, these old tombs, these pyramids and dungeons, finding treasure, killing creatures. But the fact of the matter is, when you run a dungeon, 9 times out of 10, it comes down to this game of moving to a door, kicking it in, seeing what's there, taking the treasure, killing the monster, and then moving on to the next door. You kick it in, see what's there, take some treasure, kill a monster. Then you move on to the next one. You kick the door in, see what's there, take the treasure, kill the monster. And it becomes this ongoing over and over and over sort of thing. You can definitely interject some stuff in there. You can throw some some traps in there. That helps interest things up a little bit. Same time, players get pissed off if you do too many traps. You could throw in some interesting sights, cool wall paintings on the wall, or, you know, like odds and ends treasures, puzzles. Some players like puzzles. And you can start interjecting all of these things. But the fact is, it always comes down to the same scenario. You're opening up the door, you see what's there, you do whatever is going on in this room, and you move on to the next door, and you move on to the next door, and you move on to the next door. And this becomes much more of a slog, especially in cases, you know, like I ran last night. And essentially, you know, last night I had a Witchfire campaign game, and the players ended up heading out, investigating a tomb, and starting to go through a dungeon. And actually, I'll show you the map right here. This is a simple little, let's see, like there, right up here. They went through this little dungeon area here. I think there's 15 rooms total. And what really could have been a much less time-consuming dungeon could have been much more interesting, and it could have been more exciting, I guess would be the word I'm looking for. It could have been much more invigorating to go through this than it ended up being. No, I have a certain way that I run dungeons. It's something that I've done over the years. I've become comfortable with. I feel that I'm pretty decent at it, and I can run with it and do it. I decided, for the benefit of the doubt, to give this dungeon a shot just the way it is. So I redid the map. I did one on my computer, laid it all out, and I decided to put it into Roll20. That way the players could see it, and I didn't actually go with like miniatures, and they didn't move around or anything like that, really. But I just kind of had a little blob on the screen that I can move around to show them where they were and what was going on around them. But I didn't have them actually move like a 5-foot standard or anything like that. It was just a reference map, basically. And I thought, you know, this is the sort of scenario that I'm not comfortable with. I don't really like running dungeons this way. But I decided, what the hell, you know, it's been a long time since I did that. Let's give it a shot, see how it goes. And, you know, maybe I'll learn something new. Well, I didn't necessarily learn something new, but I learned why I run dungeons the way I do now compared to this style. And it's because dungeons suck. So here's the thing. As I said before, they'll move. One room, they'll look at it, see what's going on, then move to the next room. They'll look at it, see what's going on, and then move to the next room. The idea of them passing by doorways and stuff almost becomes non-existent. You know, they want to check out every room all the way down through. And most of the time, when you have a dungeon, it isn't until the very end of that dungeon that is whatever they're there for that they're doing. Like in this case, they were looking for 4 caskets that had the bodies of the Corvus Coven. And it was, of course, at the very end of the dungeon. So they stopped at the first door, room 1. Then they stopped at room 2. And then they stopped at room 3. And then they stopped at room 4. They stopped at 5, 6, 7. There was a little tunnel that went down the side, and they did decide to bypass that one to check another door. I believe it's room 10, finally. And there they actually interacted with a guy who helped them out a little bit and pushed them towards the end of the dungeon, so they bypassed those other areas. But had they went down that path like they normally would have, it was just a spur of the moment. One of the players decided to move ahead just a little bit, just to kind of scout around the corner, saw the door, and heard something. Had that not happened, and actually that happened because I made it happen so that we could just get through this shit of a dungeon, they would have went down this other side tunnel. They would have went through 4 more rooms down there. In this 15-room dungeon that I would have ran in maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours tops, ended up taking closer to 3.5 because they were going room to room. Most of the session was, this room is mostly empty except for there is a bed of leaves and an old fire ring that still has warm embers. So what? It doesn't really matter. It had absolutely nothing to do with this game. The only hint that it gave was that somebody was already living there or has been there, which they knew from the beginning because there was all sorts of swamp gobber tracks outside of this place leading in and out of it, and there was other signs in the muck, and they were following tracks. They knew swamp gobbers were here, so all that did was reiterate the point again. So they went over to the other side room. Guess what they found? A bed of leaves, some scraps of food, garbage, a fire ring that was still warm. Same exact thing. So, they made through a couple things and went up, I think it's room 6. They got to, guess what they found? A bed of ring, a fire, a little warm thingies. They found a swamp gobber who ended up somehow lodging himself in the chimney and died, and he was rotting away. And a bed. Same exact thing. And then on room 10, and this is where I just finally said screw it and took over myself. And, they would have went in there and they would have found a room that was being prepared for the chieftain. They had a bed, side things, there was swamp gobber tracks around. Same thing. Point is, I understand why, back in the day when they made dungeons and they did things like this, and they still do it, is to kind of give the players, one, a sense of place to explore. They want them to look around. They do it as a way to give treasure, because these rooms did have a couple coins here. They found a pistol. There's a room with a dagger. There was some odds and ends. They're there. They're a way for the players to get some treasure, to get some points, and beef themselves up a little bit. Monster-wise, sometimes they'll have just pointless monsters so the players can get XP and they can move onward. I don't like XP or experience points either. I don't even use that system. I use a simple tier system. After they complete a little scenario, a session, or adventure, whatever that might be containment, they level up and we go onward. So, the whole idea of putting down a map on the players, letting them go through it, investigating areas, look around, it just doesn't work. Back in the day, it potentially did, as they had generally larger maps, and they were moving their figures around, and it was more battle-like. Things became more, I guess, it started out with that whole idea of dungeon scenarios, hence Dungeons & Dragons. They were moving through these dungeons, and that's the way it began. I think role-playing in general has taken a pretty big leap forward in the sense of actual role-playing and telling a story. And if you think about it like a movie. And the same thing happens. Let's take, I don't know, like Big Trouble in Little China, for example, okay? You got Kurt Russell's character. He's going through, towards the end of the movie, he's in that little Asian compound with that god and stuff. I don't remember his name, really. And he's getting hunted down, had that big hairy beast thing and stuff. But basically, whenever they show him, he's in a room that matters. They don't show him going into the bathroom and looking around. They don't show him looking around in a closet, looking around in the kitchen, looking around in a bed chamber to see who slept there and looking under the mattress. They don't have him wandering around pointlessly. When they have him on the screen and they're doing stuff, he is, helping people, or he's interacting with the enemies, he's in combat, he's fighting, something is happening, something exciting. And that's because they get rid of all that other bullshit that doesn't even matter to the movie. They don't take up the extra hour of him wandering around this compound doing nothing. Instead, what few times he's alone and they're kind of showing him, he's sneaking, or he knows other people are around, or something might jump out and he gets ambushed. Basically, they give the action scenes. They don't worry about that bullshit in between. And that's what happens here. And that's what I got drawn into last night when I ran this game. Is the players ended up falling into this bullshit of walking into a room that was the same over and over and over. There's like 4 or 5 rooms that are exactly the same that have absolutely no purpose. I get the idea that this temple, this ruin thing that they were in, used to be an Orgothian temple. They used to be bedchambers and things like that. And I guess it's maybe just a little bit of a nod towards the history of this culture, of what was there years ago. Kind of like if you were going through a pyramid now, and it's true. You walk through, there's going to be empty rooms and stuff, and you kind of browse through, yeah, that's there. But you're not going to waste your time on it. But when you put that map down for players, and they look at that map and they realize there's these rooms and there's these doors, their mind immediately clicks over that they need to, use their perception. They need to investigate these rooms. They got to look in all the nooks and crannies. They have to dig through the trash, look under the mattresses, look up the chimneys, and it just becomes this long, drawn-out drag. And I think even they realize it to a point, but the fact is, when you throw that map down, they get in the mindset that they have to do that or they're going to miss something. And the GM gets in the mindset that he needs to put this map down for them to do that. And it's sort of a clash between the two, because really none of that is needed. So, now that my rant is over, how do you run a dungeon better? Well, I do a couple things. First, I use the simple little 5-room dungeon rule. I use 3 to 5 rooms. Every room has a purpose. I will mention if there's other rooms. For example, if they kind of moving through a compound, I'll say, hey, there's a bedroom over here. There was nothing of interest there. You look through, you pass by a couple cell blocks that were empty, that had some bones littered about. Maybe you pass by, looks to be an armory room. You did see some swords, a few dummies and stuff. If they want to grab a sword or something, they can. But I make sure that they know that these are simple rooms. Nothing of interest is there. There's no bad guys there. There's, what little bit of treasure would be noticed, obviously, already. There's nothing there, and we can move on. Instead, I focus on the rooms that have anything of really good importance and interest. And that is what I should have done here, but I didn't. So, let me show you the little map again. So, we got here, the players kind of came up through. I had something interesting happen right here at the beginning. And then they came through, rooms were empty. Over here, empty. Came up through, empty. Came up here, and finally over here, whoops, right there, is where they met Bork, because I was getting tired of these empty, pointless rooms. So, once again, to get back off of my rant here and back to the topic at hand on how to run these better, here's a simple little map that I did. This is a session that I ran, and you can see it here. Basic, you can see 1, 3, 6, 7, 10, yeah, like 10 rooms or so on this map. Fact is, I only use about 4 or 5 of them. I don't show the players this map either. Instead, I let the players know what happens when they get there. So that first room as they entered, I would tell them, what they seen in this room where they entered and what's going on, and let them know there's a room off to the side that looks to be just an empty jail cell. And as you browse around through there, you don't see anything. Up ahead, you see a doorway that's blocked off. They know not to even mess around with that other side room because there's nothing there. I already told them. I already put in that, hey, you've already glanced around through here. You didn't see anything. It's time to move on. And they'll do so. They don't worry about it. They'll go take down this door, and then I might mention the next room over. I think I had it as a library. I had ancient books in there that they could browse around through. There was a couple puzzle thingies. There was a little trap in there. I don't have my notes of what the session had. But I made sure that whatever room they went in had something interesting, something important to that session, a monster that made sense into that scenario or was there for a reason, something happening, and got on with the mission. They killed it, they got the information they needed, and they moved on. I didn't waste any room with these little side rooms, these empty jail cells, these empty rooms, these bed chambers that had nothing in them, nothing of the sort. So, I will actually end up doing a video later down the road of creating a dungeon in my style. But what I do, just to give you an idea, if anybody ever gets the chance, maybe hop over and watch the first session of my Hello H game. That's a prime example. The players start out in cages hanging from this huge, massive spire. They glance around and they see doors all the way around this thing in a stairwell that kind of winds up. And every few, maybe 15, 20 feet, there was a doorway. In that session, as I told them, they looked around, they saw hundreds of doors. As they looked up and they down the spire, there's 100 doors or more that they can see just spiraling around this place, just this massive complex. Now, had I thrown a map down on there and showed the spiraling thing and floor upon floor upon floor upon floor upon floor, they would have eventually, got bored of it, but they would have started out going floor by floor by floor more often than not. And they would have wanted to check out that first door, and then they moved up to the second door, and then they would have moved up to the third door. I didn't want that. So I knew that my session, the Hello H game, was I'm looking at 3.5 hours. I open it up with them caught in these jail cells. They finally break free. They swing over to a ledge, and they come to the first door. They listen at it. They ended up, I don't remember, I think this is the one with the skull in it and stuff. They went in there, they interacted with the skull, they talked to it, ended up being a trapped room, the ceiling started collapsing on them and stuff. And it was this tense moment as they're trying to figure out how the hell to get out of this trapped room, as the ceiling's coming down and they're trying to break free. Eventually they did so. They got themselves out of this room and they're like, well shit, that was pretty damn dangerous, maybe we should be a little more careful. And they moved up to the next door. This one they listened at, they heard some growling, slurping sounds and disgusting stuff, and they're like, well, maybe we don't want to mess with that. But I kept that there. I knew what that room was. They went up to a next door, and I started to see where this was going, this door to door to door thing. So I just mentioned to them, yeah, you got 4 or 5 other doors you browse past. You don't really hear anything, you open them up, you don't see anything in there, just empty rooms and stuff, until you finally come to a door that has this. So basically I just fast forward them through a bullshit doors, bullshit rooms that have absolutely nothing to do with the story, and put them into a room that has something going on, something that's happening. For that session, even though this had this huge, massive castle from in hell that they were trapped in, I had, I think, 6 rooms. Or maybe, no, it was 7, because I had one for each sin, the 7 deadly sins. So I had 7 rooms. It didn't matter what room they went in, where on the spire they did it. They could have went to the very bottom, went through the first door, went to the very top, went through the last door. It doesn't matter. Whatever door they went through, I knew that that was room number 1. And if they skipped by 4 more rooms and went into the next one, I knew that was room number 2. On top of that, I knew where they had to be by the end of the session. They had to make it to like room 6, for example. I don't remember what it was. And that was where I wanted to end the session, because that was opened up into a bridge that went across this huge chasm with demons and souls below it. And I knew that's where they had to get. So as I started to go through, I started to just kind of piece together these rooms. I had these 7 rooms. They ended up only going in like 3 or 4 of them. But I picked the ones that were interesting at the moment, ones that they were hinted at, or they mentioned something about, or they were looked a little cautious about. They came to one door that looked like a giant asshole, basically, and they were like, oh man, I don't want to go down that freaking sphincter hallway, basically. So they bypassed that. But I knew if they went down that one, something cool would be down there. So, they moved into the next room. They browsed around a couple little rooms, interacted with some monsters. They had this big, huge vagina monster thing that they were killing that was spitting out clones. Started following them around. Eventually, they knew they had this huge tower of doors, but they knew that, hey, that sphincter room is right there. It looks like it's pretty dangerous. Maybe that's the way out of here. And that's how they were kind of talking and going these things. And that's when I figured, yeah, that's the room that's going to have the bridge. I kind of coaxed them in that direction. They went through there, got to the bridge, and that was the end of the session. So, I have this huge castle that probably had a good 60, 70 rooms in it, but I only created 7 rooms. Each room had its own importance, its own clues, its own interactions, its own encounters, and each one worked specifically to that story, into specifically at the time that was going on. So, the point being, you don't need a map. It's a waste of time. At least not for the players. You don't need a map for the players. You should probably kind of browse out your one sort of like this, maybe something real simple. By all means, if that gives you another. I think I got another one here. Yeah, so this was another one of a castle thing that they went through. And see, it goes from room to room. I have a few arrows where they go, so I know what's happening. So up here at room 1, I know went down to 2B, and I also went over to 2A, it looks like. So basically there's 2 doors. Every room in this castle, again, this was just another huge, massive monstrosity of a castle. I would have said normally if somebody would have mapped this out, you probably would have had 50, 60 rooms. I had, 3, 6, 9, 12. 12 rooms total. The way the scenario went, there was only 6 floors that I had to go through. Each floor had dozens of rooms, but they only had this room was the only important one. So I told them that as they went through, they walked through this corridor. Off to the side would be dozens of these little empty rooms. They would have bodies rolling around in agony, screaming for pain, shackled to the walls. None of them, I would mention that these people had no interest in the players themselves. They were just mad with crazy and torment. So they had no reason to go in all these other little rooms until they got to the end, and they had to go through this room or whatever it might be to get on to the next series, and to get on to the next series, and so on and so forth. So on top of all that, besides, don't use a map. At least don't give the players a map. I know that sounds like a horrendous thing to do, and people will guffaw and, probably want to shove a pole up my ass for saying that, but I don't give the players a map. Not in that sense, because they just go door to door and it becomes that drag. Exactly what happened last night. 2, if you do a map for yourself, keep it really simple, really crude. You don't need much. If you're doing a castle, you don't need every room. I don't give a shit about the closets, the empty rooms, the bed chambers that have nothing in them. It's nothing for me to utilize. It has nothing to do with the story. I don't want it as a player. The third thing you can do, pick out those important rooms. Give them a feeling, give them a sense of importance, give them a meaning within that dungeon, and give them something that presses the narrative forward, that pushes the players forward, that does something. And that just goes back to not these bullshit rooms. So I will end my rant here because I'm rather annoyed at this whole thing and this whole process. I'm continuing the Switchfire trilogy. Obviously, it's a great session. It's a great campaign, really. The story is amazing. I'm going to continue on with that. The next dungeon that comes along, I think it has, like 20-some rooms. Not even really sure. Let's see. Yeah, 21 rooms, right? I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I would say about 11 of them are just pointless. They're empty jail cells, or they're empty rooms or bed chambers. They're absolutely nothing of importance. So when I run this game, I'm going to have the basic entry area where they come in. I let them know what's going on, set the scene for this session. The couple first areas have some traps and some other things going on, maybe. So I will, use those as well. Utilize them, get everything in. There's a really cool encounter in one of the first couple of rooms that they have to go through, which I'll definitely use that because it's a lot of fun. And then after that, it's just a good 1, 2, 3, like 9, 10 rooms of absolutely pointlessness. There's really nothing there. They designed it up because of the way this. I don't want to give any details in this video in case any of my players are watching. But it's designed up in this complex of this compound. And when they mapped it out, they wanted to do so that it looked like this compound. You want a church to look like a church. You want a prison to look like a prison. But the fact is, if I lay this map down, they're going to want to go through room by room by room and do these. I don't need to have that happen. So I'm not even going to use this map. I'll use it for my use. I'm going to skip this whole middle section, have them do the beginning, have them do the couple encounters, let them know that they traveled through this room, this happened, and that happened. Nothing of importance that they need to roll for, interact with, or do until they get to towards the end, where I guess it's room 17 or 18 here, where something else happens. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. And as I go through later on, I'm going to end up having more Witchfire videos that kind of deal with this and show people who might be interested in this campaign in the future of running it, how to convert these dungeons over to that sort of scenario. So with that said, I bid you all a good day. I hope you have a lot of fun. Keep playing those games, keep rolling those dice. I'd like to know your thoughts on the dungeons. What do you have problems running dungeons that there's a room by room basis? Do you do as I do and only take out the importance run and run at Theater of the Mind? Do you have a different technique? Do you like to go, putting that map down and having the players move through these rooms? Maybe people enjoy that. I guess I just can't get behind it. I find it extremely annoying and aggravating and time consuming. That's doing absolutely nothing for the story. So let me know your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear it, guys. Have a great day and keep rolling those dice.